I was going to net that, but I'll swing it in. So you join me this evening on the Forth and Clyde Canal at Windford Lock. It's been raining all day, light's going down at the moment, so I'm not sure how this video is going to come out, but we'll give it a best shot. Now the purpose of this short video, which is the next in the series, is really to have a look at what tackle you need to take with you when you go fishing on the canal. And the things we've got with us today was obviously, we've got the whip that we set up in the garden the other day with the winder already attached to it, so that will speed things up this evening. I haven't brought anything else with me, I've just brought the whip, so we'll see how we get on. And as you see, we've got the winder attached with a little rubber band, so that's all ready to go. We just need to push it, feed it out, and we'll do that in a few minutes. I'm going to pop the rod case in the bottom of my bag, in the bottom of my box, out of the way, because I have a feeling it's going to rain again very shortly. So we've got the rod that we're going to fish with, the 5-meter whip. Other things we need is something to sit on. Now, something to sit on is quite important if you're going to fish static all day, because it's a lot more comfortable than trying to sit on the ground or sit on a coat or even stand up. And as well as that, if you're sitting and static, you're not constantly moving around. So as I said before, the water in the canal is very, very clear. So if you're getting up and standing up and sitting down and moving around all the time, you can actually spook the fish. And we don't want to do that, because we want to keep them in front of us as long as possible. So what I've got is, I've got a little canal stool. You can pick these up with adjustable height legs. You can pick these up for anywhere between about £50 and about 150, depending on what you want. This one's got 36 millimeter legs, so it's a bit more expensive, but you can get ones with all sorts of different leg sizes and diameters and at price ranges. So I shop around and you can get a good one. Now the advantage of having a canal stool like this is you can adjust the leg height, so you can make sure that you're sitting with your legs pretty much parallel or sloping down just slightly, so that you've got a balanced, stable position from which to fish, and it's not going to move. It's really, really safe. The other reason for getting now, that's really important if you're going to fish with a pole. It's not so important if you're fishing with a whip or with a rod and line, but if you're going to be fishing with a pole, a proper pole, where the weight's going to be in front of you, it's really important to have your legs parallel to the ground, so that you've got a stable base and you're not putting undue pressure onto your low back. So that's something to sit on. As I say, if you're fishing a whip or a rod and reel, you can get away with a canal stool or a chair, a camping chair, or one of the fishing chairs that has adjustable height legs on it. They're perfectly adequate if you're just going to be fishing with a whip or with a rod and line. So what I've brought with me apart from that is I've got a landing net with a landing net handle, and it's important to if we do catch something big, to have a landing net. Now you don't need a big commercial one. Anything with a smallish 30 centimetre, 35 centimetre head will do, because we're unlikely to catch massive fish on the canal. On the other side, I've got a little bowl here, but you could just put your bucket with your ground bait, and in that is the ground bait mix that we mixed up earlier today. Okay, so that's all ready to go. I've just put a tad more water in it just to get the consistency back, and I've actually riddled it back through again, so it's nice and fine and ready to fish with. On the other side, I've got a side tray, and a side tray is really handy. As I say, if you don't have one, you can upturn a bucket and put stuff on top of a bucket, or just have a bag there to put stuff on. And on the side tray I've got my maggots, my pinkies that we spoke about before, a few worms in case it's really hard and we need to fish for perch. Hopefully we won't need those. And I've also brought some of that liquidized bread, and I've got my little punch box here with my slices of bread and my bread punches. Now you wouldn't normally fish with ground bait and liquidized bread in the same peg, but at the moment I haven't plumbed this peg up, so I'm not sure if it's going to be very weedy or what the bottom's going to be like or anything. So what I'm doing at the moment is I'm hedging my bets. I've got everything with me just in case. If there's a lot of weed on the bottom and a lot of weed and I can't find a clear area to put ground bait in, then what I could do is I could feed the ground bait loose if I wanted to, or what I could do is I could start on liquidized bread. And as we spoke about before, when you put liquidized bread in, it breaks up as it goes down through the water and just carpets the weed, and the fish browse around over the weed, picking up bits of bread, and you just fish your bread on the hook, your punched bread on the hook, off the bottom, just over the top of that that bread and that liquidized bread, and you get bites very quickly. Touch wood. If that doesn't work, then we can always opt for ground bait, a few pinkies. We'll probably roll the pinkies so they don't crawl off everywhere. A few pinkies in, a ball of ground bait, we'll throw that in, and we'll just fish pinky on the hook over the top of that. And that's as simple as it is. The other things I've got is I've got the bucket I use to mix the ground bait up in with a bottle of water. Always important to keep hydrated, even when it's raining. And underneath is I've got my big bag of of worms that I took some out to put in here. So that's it. We're ready to go. So what we're going to do is I'm going to extend this out, and because I'm going to start on bread punch, the hook we put on here yesterday was a B2000, which is a very long shanked and fine wire hook, which is really good for pinkies, but it's not so good for bread punch, liquidized bread. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, when we push this out, I'm actually going to get my hook box out, and I'm actually going to change the hook for a round bend silver pattern, nickel pattern hook, which is a Colmic N957, which is a very good hook for fishing bread punch. Okay. So that's our whip rig, and at the bottom, might need to pop my glasses on for this, but on the bottom we've got, we'll take that off. If you take off hooks and everything, always put them into your bucket and take them home with you. Don't never leave line lying around on the bank. It's a danger to wildlife, and it gives us all a bad name if we leave tackle lying about. So we're going to go for a size 22 in an 08. And again, all these hook lengths are 6 inches, so it doesn't actually change the. If we'd have plumbed up and then we needed to change back to one of those B2000 hooks that we tied up in the last video, it doesn't matter, because, as I said, they're all the same, all 6 inch. So when you take one off and put another one on, you're still going to be fishing exactly the same depth, so you don't have to worry about things. Pop my eyes on, my old man eyes on. Not that it actually helps very much these days. Oh. As you can see, so basically loop over the top of the other loop, grab our hook, I want the hook down through that other loop, which obviously is closed up a little bit, and then basically pull it tight, and that's our hook. And that's as quick as it is to change a hook. So the first thing that we need to do, and I'm going to bring it up to the camera to show you, is the first thing we need to do is we need to plumb the depth. We need to work out how deep the peg that we're fishing is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the camera over here, and then you'll be able to see a little bit better what we're doing. But what we're going to use to do the plumbing up is one of these. This is a little plastic, lead plummet, and on the bottom it's got a little bit of neoprene that we're going to put the hook into. So all we do is we pop the hook through the eye at the top of it. You see there's an eye at the top. We'll pop the hook through the eye, and we're going to pull it down to the side, and we're just going to stick it into the neoprene at the bottom like that. So now we've got the plummet hanging onto the hook. Now what that does obviously is the plummet's a lot heavier than the float will take. So if we're under depth, the float will sink. If we're over depth, the float will be sticking out of the water. So I'm going to pop this down, I'm going to move the camera, and then we can try and get a look at where we're going to be plumbing up. Okay, so we've got the plummet on, and what we're going to do now is we're just going to have a little plumb around the peg and try to find out where we're going to fish. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go out directly under the whip tip, just about there, and you can see that's about a float over depth. Okay, it's pretty level, and what we're going to do is we're going to start bringing the whip back towards us a little bit. Okay, still the same depth, starting to come up just there, which will probably be the inside of that inside shelf. Now we're not going to reach the bottom of the far shelf here today, simply because we don't we've only got the whip, so we can only fish the 6 meters out that we've got. So that's just going away out towards the middle. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're now going to take off. So what we're going to do is actually sitting there at the deepest part of the peg. Okay, it's starting to come up as it comes to about there. It's just starting to inch up. So we're going to try and run the line along that edge of the bottom of that shelf. So what we're going to do is we're going to take almost a float off, and we're going to do it again just to check we've got the right depth. Hopefully you can see this. Right, that's just touching the bottom now. That's just off the bottom, which is what we want. And then if we come over here, you'll see it starting to come up again. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to try and fish just at the bottom of that shelf, just there. But we also need to check whether there's any weed there. Now if I've got a big heavy plummet on like I've got now, and I pull it left and right, it's probably going to go through the weed because it's quite heavy. But if I was to put a lighter plummet on, so I'm going to just replace this plummet with a much smaller one. So this plummet we've got on at the moment is a 20 gram plummet, and what I've got in the drawer here is I've got a 5 gram one. Now if I put a 5 gram plummet on and there's weed, what will happen is the plummet won't be heavy enough to pull through the weed. What's actually going to happen is the plummet will get stuck on the weed, and therefore it won't settle. And what we can do then is, if there's lots of weed there, which I suspect there is, it's a very open part of the canal this. See, look, there's weed there straight away. Okay, there's a little gap there which seems clean, and then we've got another bit of weed there, and that's a clean bit there. So we seem to be running through a bit of a channel just there. It's a little bit close to us, to be honest with you, so we're gonna go a bit further down, try and find a nice channel on that. And what it looks to me like the weed is in lines running down the canal like that with the flow. And you can see it on the inside here, and it'll be grasses. So what we've got to do is we've got to try and let, this is a big bank of weed just there, that's stuck. So it's going to come off. So we're going to go from there. We'll flick it down one more time and bring it, there you go. It's that grass stuff, which is horrible grassy bits and pieces. Now if your bait falls down between that, what tends to happen is the fish can't see your bait, so they don't take it. So the other option we've got is that we find out how deep it is and we fish over the top of it. So we could take another float off and try and fish over the top of that weed. So I think there's a nice little channel. I did have a nice little channel. Just there, there's a nice little channel. So it's almost in the middle, which is frustrating, but that's how it goes sometimes. When you've only got the 6 meter whip, you're kind of a bit restricted to what you can do. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the bait on that line, and then we're going to try and fish down that line of the canal. So I know where I want to fish now. Right, so what we're going to do is, I can just about see that float under the water there. I'm going to get one ball. I'll put in a reasonable size one, it's going a bit dark. So one hand size ball. I'm just going to re-put that in where I want it so that I can see where to throw it. And I think what we're going to be doing is just where those weeds are going through at the moment. I think that's where we want to be. There we go. So we're going to go. Now I've thrown it slightly further back because the canal is towing that way, and that will hopefully then just fall down through the water and form a nice carpet. And you can probably see, I'm not sure you can see on the camera, the big cloud of bread coming off from underneath that. So that's the line we're going to be fishing. So I'm going to pop this rig back onto the elastic. We'll move the camera so we can have a chat and we can see each other, or you can see me, and then we'll have a quick see if we can catch a fish.